Family, good morning. Kyle Henderson, Bama Football on YouTube. I know what you're thinking this morning. What are Alabama's playoff chances? Is the season done? Can this team have a bounce back? What are Alabama's playoff chances? Okay, so let me walk you through each of those scenarios following Alabama's 23-21 loss to Oklahoma. All right, there's still a lot of football to be played. All right, I'm going to walk you off the edge. Right now, if you go full screen and you look to the SEC football standings, it might seem like Alabama's lost a couple SEC games. That was their first loss in the SEC. You have Texas A&M, who came from behind to beat South Carolina, right? You have Georgia, and I'm talking about the conference record right here. You have Georgia at 7-1 after beating Texas. You have Ole Miss at 6-1 with a victory over Florida, and you have Alabama at 6-1, okay? Those are the teams right now that we're going to focus on. Now, if Alabama, and there's a couple different scenarios right here to go over, so I already printed them out for you. Alabama's chances to make the SEC title game, I mean, even if you don't understand what I'm about to say, beat Auburn, and Alabama's playing in the SEC title game. So let me go through the first part. If Alabama beats Auburn, if Texas A&M beats Texas, Alabama versus A&M in the SEC title, as Bama is above Georgia and Ole Miss based on conference opponent winning percentage, okay? The second part right here, if Alabama beats Auburn, if Texas beats Texas A&M, Alabama versus Georgia in the SEC title. Georgia is above Ole Miss and A&M based on conference opponent win percentage, right? I mean, how big was that win by Alabama over Georgia? That's how big. So Alabama, long story short, has to take care of business clearly against Eastern Illinois and has to beat Auburn to get into the SEC title game. So you're like, okay, so if Alabama's to get into the SEC title game, and let's say they lose that game, what happens to them? Good question. I'll get to that in just a second. But here are some best case and worst case scenarios for Alabama, and I threw in a plausible as well. So we'll start with the best case. Best case is clearly they go on a tear. We saw what happened when Alabama was punched in the mouth against Florida State, right? They went and won 8 consecutive games in a row. Maybe this is the late season punch in the mouth that you needed to kind of get things corrected, and Alabama starts to absolutely roll from here on out, right? You play Eastern Illinois, you play Auburn. Those are 2 W's that would get Alabama to a 10-win season. Right now, 8-2, right? That would be 10-2 and play in the SEC title game. You play in the SEC title game, you play, I don't know, let's say Texas A&M. You beat Texas A&M, now 11-2. You play in the quarters. You win in the quarterfinal. You play in the semis. You win in the semifinals. And then you win a national championship. That is the best case scenario, and Alabama finishes out 14-2 and wins the national title. Okay. Now, another plausible option. Now, they could certainly drop, any of these playoff games, but let's just think about a plausible option. They beat Eastern Illinois. They beat Auburn. They get in the SEC title game. They lose that game. Okay. They have to play, they either host a playoff game or they have to travel on the road in the first round. Okay. They win that game, and then they win in the quarters, right? Beat somebody, I don't know, beat one of the teams who's hosting or who's kind of has a bye in the playoffs, and then they lose in like the semifinals. That would be a finish of like 12-4. Not bad. I mean, dang, made to the playoffs and kind of found their way and still made the playoffs. Now, the worst case scenario is crazy, okay? Because theoretically, and I was thinking about this is you lose to Auburn and you lose the bowl game, kind of like they lost last year to Michigan. You come up with the exact same results as last year, which I think would be beyond frustrating for Alabama football fans. Number 1, you lost to Auburn. Number 2, you don't make the SEC title game. Number 3, you don't get into the playoffs. Number 4, you lose a bowl game. And number 5, you finish with the exact same record as you did the previous year, right? I think for Alabama football fans, they would be pulling out their hair if that is a scenario. So those are some best case plausible and a worst case scenario going forward, all right? Currently, this is how I have the college football playoff rankings. Ohio State clearly at number 1, Indiana at 2. A&M after that come from behind victory, got to keep them at 3. Moving up a spot is Georgia. Then you have Texas Tech, who beat up on Central Florida. You have Ole Miss, who beat Florida. You have Oregon, who beat Minnesota. You have Notre Dame, who beat Pitt. You have Oklahoma, who beat Alabama. Alabama at 8-2. And then right here, I don't know what the committee is going to do. And again, the playoff rankings will be released on Tuesday, and the AP and coaches poll will be released later today, and I will be live during that point in time to discuss those rankings with you. BYU, Miami, Georgia Tech, Bama. I don't know how the seeding committee is going to put all those teams into the bracket. You have to take Georgia Tech if they win the ACC. You have to take either North Texas or James Madison, as they are the highest ranked group of 5, right? So that takes 2 playoff spots. Now, these other spots, you have BYU, who currently is a 1-loss team. They beat TCU last night, and they are slated to play Cincinnati, and if they win that game, then they're going to play Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game. So theoretically, they could have finished with a 1-loss season or finish with a 2-loss season. So I started thinking about it. I was like, what if these different scenarios happen at the back end of the year? Okay, Alabama finishes out 10-3 with a loss in the SEC title game. Right, they beat Eastern Illinois, they beat Auburn, make it to the SEC title game, and lose. Okay, so they finish at 10-3. Would they be punished if they do lose in the SEC title game, right? Because they've already lost 2 times. That would be their 3rd loss. And as you can see, that's more losses than any of these other teams in this scenario, right? Notre Dame, let's say they finish out strong. We know they're going to. And they finish out 10-2. Well, they don't even play in a conference title game. So they can't even be rewarded for winning a conference or penalized for losing a conference championship game. And I think that is going to come into play instrumentally here in the back end, right? They just finished at 10-2. They're like, hey, we're done. Sorry, we don't even play in a conference. And then how about BYU? What if BYU finishes out and they get to the Big 12 championship game, a team that the committee has loved, right? At one point they were ranked like 7 or something like that, and they lose to number 5 Texas Tech. Well, is that a really bad loss? Do they kick BYU out, being that they've only lost to a top 5 team not once but twice? Like, think about it. Those aren't bad losses. Alabama's losses are worse, right? They lost to unranked Florida State. They lost to a top 10 Oklahoma, and they would have lost to, let's say, a top 5 A&M. But I think the unranked loss will come back to bite them if they go to BYU and Alabama. See what I'm saying? And then Miami, that's the other team, right? They would finish out 10-2 because likely they're not going to reach their ACC championship game. So they're 10-2 with 2 losses, right? And where would they be ranked, right? I think it might come down in this scenario, oddly enough, to BYU and maybe Alabama, if that is the scenario. Now, of course, Alabama takes care of business and they win the SEC title game or whatever, they're 1,000,000% in the playoffs. Plus, I think in this scenario, you have to weight the conference overall. The schedule that Alabama played was much more challenging than that of BYU, Miami, and Notre Dame. This team played, 5 top 25 teams throughout the entire season, and you know the strength of the SEC. So I would imagine if we get into a scenario like that, they might penalize Alabama for losing to an unranked team. But on the flip side, I think they might be rewarded for reaching the title game in the toughest conference in college football. All right. As you know, this always comes down, and this is they put this maybe as worst case scenario, having to go down to the barn at the last game of the season to make the playoffs. I mean, it's like, really? Out of all the places in the world that you have to go to punch your ticket to the SEC title game or to continue your fight for the playoffs, you got to go to Auburn. It's crazy. And the games at Tuscaloosa, I'm so confident about when Alabama plays and hosts Auburn. But the games over there, honestly, who the hell knows? Look at the last couple of games down at the barn, okay? Tuscaloosa last year, 28-14. Took care of them by 2 touchdowns, okay? But in 2023, right, 2 seasons ago, it was 27-24, all right? The year before that, here in Tuscaloosa, Bama took care of them, 49-27. The last time, back in 2021 at the barn, Alabama, 24-21. Again, here at Tuscaloosa, 42-13. Back in 2019, 48-45. You see what I'm saying? And then back in, 2017, it was 26-14. So the games at the barn are absolutely crazy. We all know that. Auburn will play its best game of the season. They've been playing everybody close. They don't even have a head coach. In fact, DJ Durkin is probably a better coach than Hugh Freeze. So I don't know, you know as much as I do, there's so much on the line, but there's still a lot of football to be played. So Alabama turns the page to Eastern Illinois. You take care of that game, you stay healthy, and look, at the back end of when you're prepping for Eastern Illinois, you're also prepping for Auburn, and you understand what's at stake in the most pivotal SEC rivalry game that you could ever play in at the barn. We don't even know what time that game is. Probably be at night under the lights at the haunted barn. That's what Coach Saban said, that place is haunted. So that's explaining kind of where things stand right now. It's far from over. You understand what's at stake. Beat Eastern Illinois, beat Auburn in the SEC title game. As news happens, I got you covered right here on Bama Football on YouTube. Hey, be sure and keep your heads on a swivel for a lot of videos that are going to be pumped out. Probably have another live dropping out this morning where we do some interaction, and then live again for the AP Top 25 rankings.